Welcome back, everyone. Today I have an incredible HFI story for you. Queen Seraphael is dying. Her physicians have given up. A degenerative condition their advanced medicine can't touch. But Marcus Webb, a human nurse, notices something they missed. Pattern. A possibility. He's invisible here. Curiosity. But he might be the only one who can save her life. This is the alien queen was dying. Let's begin. Queen's physicians stepped back from her bedside, their silver robes rustling like whispers of defeat. High Physician Valorn turned to the assembled court, his elongated face betraying nothing as he spoke the words that would shatter an empire. There is nothing more we can do. I stood in the corner of the royal medical chamber, invisible as always. A human nurse assigned to menial tasks, fetching instruments, changing linens, existing in the margins of Kethrani society. 3 years on this world and I had learned that humans were tolerated, never respected. We were the galaxy's newest species to achieve interstellar travel, and to civilizations that had sailed between stars for millennia, we were little more than curious animals who had stumbled upon fire. Queen Seraphael lay on the crystalline bed, her once luminous violet skin now faded to a dull gray. The bioluminescent patterns that marked Kethrani royalty, those intricate swirls that should have pulsed with inner light, were dark. She was 43 in human years, barely middle-aged for her kind, and she was dying from a degenerative condition their advanced medicine couldn't touch. "The Queen requires peace," Valorn announced. "Clear the chamber." The courtiers began their practiced withdrawal, a choreographed dance of bows and measured steps. I gathered my supplies preparing to follow when I noticed something that made me freeze. Her breathing pattern. The slight tremor in her fingers. The way her eyes moved beneath closed lids. I had seen this before. Not in Kethrani, in humans. In my mother specifically during the 3 months I spent watching her die in a colony hospital on Kepler 442b, while doctors insisted nothing could be done. Wait. The word escaped me before wisdom could intervene. Every head turned. Valorn's obsidian eyes narrowed with something between confusion and offense. The human nurse speaks? My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced myself to stand straight. Her symptoms. The neural degradation pattern, it's not what you think it is. You presume to understand Kethrani physiology? A younger physician, Talith, stepped forward, his voice dripping with contempt. You who cannot even properly pronounce our ceremonial titles. No, I admitted. But I understand cellular cascade failure. I've seen it. The progression is wrong for natural degeneration. This looks like... I hesitated, knowing how insane it would sound. This looks like heavy metal poisoning. Specifically, something that mimics your neural transmitters but blocks them instead. Silence. The kind of silence that precedes either violence or revolution. High Physician Valorn's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Heavy metal poisoning would appear on our scans. Not if it bonded with her royal bioluminescent compounds first. The very thing that makes her royalty could be masking what's killing her. I swallowed hard. On Earth, on my world, we had a similar problem with certain toxins and hemoglobin. Doctors missed it for decades until a nurse noticed the pattern in patients' nail beds. You compare our queen to human cattle. I compare suffering to suffering. Disease doesn't care about crowns or species. The queen's eyes opened. I had never seen a Kethrani royal's eyes up close. They were like captured galaxies, deep purple with swirling flecks of gold that seemed to move with their own light. Even dimmed by illness, they commanded attention. Let him speak. Her voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. I am dying regardless. What harm is there in letting the human be wrong? Valorn bowed deeply. As your luminance commands. Queen Seraphael's gaze found mine, and for a moment I forgot about the court, the physicians, the vast gulf of species and status between us. I saw only a woman who was tired of waiting for death. What is your name, human nurse? Marcus Webb, your luminance. Marcus Webb. She tested the syllables like unfamiliar fruit. Tell me what you see that my physicians do not. I approached the bed, acutely aware of every eye on me. May I examine your hands? A murmur rippled through the remaining courtiers. Physical contact with the queen by anyone below the rank of high physician was unprecedented. But she extended her hand, long fingers, elegant even in illness, the skin cool and papery beneath my touch. I turned her hand over, studying the faint lines where her bioluminescent channels ran beneath the surface. In healthy Kethrani, these lines glowed softly. In royalty, They blazed. In Queen Seraphael they were dark, but not uniformly. There were patches, inconsistencies, a pattern that spoke of something external rather than internal failure. "There," I said, pointing to a cluster of darkened channels near her wrist. "And there. The degradation isn't following your neural pathways. It's following your circulatory system. Whatever is killing you, you're ingesting it." High Physician Valorn moved closer, his skepticism warring with professional curiosity. "That is an interesting observation. Run a spectral analysis on her bloodstream," I pressed. "Filter for compounds that match her bioluminescent frequency. Something is hiding in plain sight." The Queen's hand tightened around mine, a gesture so unexpected that I nearly pulled away. "Do it," she commanded. "Run his test." Valorn bowed and departed with 2 junior physicians. Courtiers lingered, uncertain, until Queen Seraphael dismissed them with a wave. Soon, only her personal guard remained, 4 towering Kathrani warriors who watched me with expressions that promised creative violence if I proved to be wasting their monarch's final hour. "Sit," the Queen said, gesturing to a chair beside her bed. "If I am to die tonight, I would prefer conversation to silence." I sat, still holding her hand because she hadn't released it. "You're not going to die tonight." Such certainty. The ghost of a smile touched her lips. Is this human optimism or human arrogance? Neither. It's pattern recognition. I've been wrong before, but not about this. You speak as one familiar with death. The observation cut deeper than she could have known. I watched my mother die from something doctors said was untreatable. It took me 2 years to understand what really happened to her. A contaminated water supply on our colony that no one thought to test because the symptoms mimicked natural aging. By the time I figured it out, 63 people had died, including her. Queen Seraphael's grip on my hand softened. "And so you watch. You look for patterns others miss." I became a nurse because I couldn't save her. I thought maybe I could save someone else. I met her strange, beautiful eyes. "I don't know if I can save you, Your Luminance, but I know your physicians are looking in the wrong direction. You are either very brave or very foolish, Marcus Webb. Probably both." She laughed, a sound like crystal chimes, weak but genuine. "And I do not wish to die before learning which." An hour later, High Physician Valorn returned. His face had lost its composed certainty. In his hands he carried a data tablet that trembled slightly. "The human was correct," he announced, the words seeming to physically pain him. "We found traces of Velith compound bonded to her luminance's bioluminescent markers. It is a poison, one designed specifically for Royal Kathrani physiology." The guard stiffened. The Queen closed her eyes. "Someone is trying to murder me," she said quietly. "And it took a human nurse to see what my own people could not." I wanted to say something wise, something comforting. Instead I said, "The alien queen was dying. I was just a human nurse. But now we know why. And knowing why means we can fight it." Queen Seraphael opened her eyes and looked at me, truly looked, as if seeing me for the first time. "Yes," she whispered. "Now we fight." Marcus was right. Queen is being poisoned. Something hiding in her bioluminescent compounds. Now he must convince a court that despises humans that their monarch is being murdered. And find the killer before it's too late. The next 6 days blurred into a rhythm of crisis and determination. The Velith compound had done significant damage before its discovery, and reversing its effects required treatments that didn't exist in Kathrani medicine. I found myself working alongside physicians who had spent centuries mastering their craft, contributing insights from human biochemistry that occasionally proved relevant and often proved useless. But I stayed. Queen had requested, not commanded, requested, that I remain on her medical team. High Physician Valorn had nearly choked on his own tongue at the suggestion, but he couldn't refuse his monarch. "Your species metabolizes toxins differently," Queen Seraphael explained during one of our late-night treatment sessions, when the pain kept her from sleep and she preferred conversation to suffering in silence. "You have survived on a death world filled with poisons that would kill us in moments. Perhaps there is wisdom in that survival." "Earth isn't a death world," I protested, adjusting the neural stabilizer attached to her temple. "It's just enthusiastic about natural selection. You have creatures that produce venom, plants that excrete acid, bacteria that consume flesh." He raised an eyebrow. "And you consider this normal?" "Well, when you put it that way." Her laugh had grown stronger over the past few days, Still weak, but no longer the fragile sound of someone preparing for death. The treatments were working, slowly. The poison was being filtered from her system. But the damage to her bioluminescent channels might be permanent, and for a Kathrani royal, that carried implications beyond health. "You have not asked," she observed on the 5th night, "about the investigation." I continued calibrating the treatment parameters, keeping my voice neutral. "It's not my place. Everything about your presence here is not your place, Marcus Webb, and yet here you are." She had a point. "I assumed you would tell me what you wanted me to know." A diplomatic answer. "You are learning." She shifted on her bed, wincing at movement that should have been effortless. 3 suspects have been identified, all members of the High Council, all with motive, means, and opportunity. Let me guess, they're not happy about something you've done. They are not happy about something I intend to do. Her eyes met mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "I have been negotiating a formal alliance with the Human Confederation. Full recognition, shared technology, integration into the Galactic Assembly, as equal members." I set down my instruments. "That would change everything." "Yes, and there are those who believe humanity is too primitive, too dangerous, too—" She searched for the word, "unpredictable for such an honor." "They prefer you remain in your designated status, tolerated visitors, observed curiosities, carefully contained." "And you disagree?" "I believe that a species which clawed its way from planetary extinction to interstellar travel in 3 centuries has something to offer. I believe that dismissing you as primitives is the same arrogance that has calcified my people for millennia." She reached out and touched my hand, a gesture that had become natural between us, though I knew it scandalized her guards every time. "And I believe that a human nurse saw what a dozen Kathrani physicians could not, because he looked at a dying queen and saw only a patient who needed help. Your luminance, Seraphael." Her voice softened. "When we are alone you may call me Seraphael." I should have declined. Protocol demanded it. Self-preservation demanded it. But the way she looked at me, not as a subject, not as an alien, but as a person whose presence she valued, made refusal impossible. "Seraphael," I said, and the name felt like a secret shared. "You still have not asked the question you want to ask," she observed. "Which question?" "Whether I survived because of your observation or despite it. Whether I kept you here out of gratitude or utility or—" She paused, her violet skin darkening in what I had learned was the Kathrani equivalent of a blush, other reasons. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me that you understand." She sat up straighter, strength returning to her frame after days of weakness. "I am a queen. My every action carries political weight. If I show favor to a human, it is analyzed for strategic implications. If I request your presence, it is interpreted as a statement about interspecies relation." Her hand tightened on mine. "But I am also a woman who has spent 15 years on a throne surrounded by courtiers who see only a symbol. You looked at me and saw someone dying. You held my hand without calculating the political advantage. Do you understand how rare that is?" "I understand loneliness," I said quietly. "Doesn't care about crowns either." "No, it does not." We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of unspoken things hanging between us. I should have withdrawn my hand. I should have maintained professional distance. Instead, I turned my palm up, intertwining my fingers with hers. "The treatment is working," I said eventually. "Another week, and you should be able to resume limited duties." And then I returned to the nursing staff, and you returned to being queen, and we pretend this week never happened. Is that what you want? What I want doesn't matter. What matters is what's appropriate, what's safe for you, what won't give your enemies ammunition to— Marcus. The way she said my name stopped me mid-sentence. I asked what you want. I met her eyes, those impossible galaxy-filled eyes, and told her the truth. I want to keep holding your hand. I want to keep talking to you when the pain keeps you awake. I want to learn every expression that crosses your face and understand what each one means. And I want that to be possible, without it destroying everything you're trying to build. She smiled, a real smile, one that made her bioluminescent channels flicker weakly with light for the first time in days. Then we will have to be very careful, she said. And very patient. I can do careful, patient might be harder. Then it is fortunate that I am a queen, and patience is my profession. On the 7th day an assassin came for her. I was asleep in the adjacent monitoring room when the alarms triggered. By the time I reached her chamber, 2 of her guards were down and a figure in black was standing over her bed, blade raised. I didn't think. I moved. The impact took us both to the floor. The assassin was Kathrani, faster and stronger than me, but I had grown up on a colony world where bar fights were a weekly occurrence. I fought dirty, eyes, throat, groin, all the vulnerable points that transcended species. By the time the remaining guards reached us, the assassin was unconscious, and I was bleeding from a dozen shallow cuts. Queen Seraphael stood beside her bed, a ceremonial blade in her hand that she had clearly been prepared to use. Her eyes were wide, her breath rapid, her bioluminescent channels pulsing with agitated light. "You protected me," she said, something like wonder in her voice. "You threw yourself at an armed attacker with no weapon, no armor, no. You were in danger." It seemed self-evident. What else was I supposed to do? "You are human. I am Kathrani. We are not your people." I climbed to my feet, wincing at the pain that was starting to register now that the adrenaline was fading. "You're my patient, and my—" I caught myself, aware of the guards watching us. "You're under my care." But she had heard the hesitation. Her expression softened into something that made my heart clench. "Get him to the medical bay," she commanded, her voice steady even as her eyes stayed locked on mine. "He has earned the finest treatment we can provide." "Your Luminance," one of the guards began. "The human should be questioned about. The human just saved my life." Her tone brooked no argument. "He will be treated as a hero, not a suspect. Is that understood?" The guard bowed and led me away. But I looked back at the doorway and found Seraphael still watching me, one hand pressed to her heart in a gesture I didn't recognize but somehow understood. "The poison has been identified. Queen is recovering. But the conspiracy runs deeper than anyone knew. Someone on the High Council wants her dead. And they're willing to kill anyone who gets in their way, including the human nurse who saved her." The assassination attempt changed everything. The assassin, under interrogation, revealed a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of Kathrani government. Council member Vorath, the loudest opponent of human Kathrani alliance, had orchestrated both the poisoning and the direct attack. His arrest sent shockwaves through the empire, and suddenly, the human nurse who had exposed the plot and then physically defended the queen became the most talked about figure in Kathrani society. I hated every moment of it. "You are uncomfortable with recognition," Seraphael observed. 3 weeks after the attack. We were walking in her private garden. She was strong enough for limited exercise now, while her guards maintained a discreet distance. Most beings crave acknowledgement. Most beings don't get acknowledged for doing what anyone decent would have done. Heck, my pace measured to match her still recovering strength. "I didn't save you for glory. I saved you because I love you," I didn't say. Because somewhere between holding your hand while you struggled to breathe and arguing about the ethics of interspecies relations at 3 in the morning, I fell in love with you, and the thought of you dying made everything else irrelevant. Because it was the right thing to do, I finished lamely. She stopped walking. "Marcus, look at me." I turned to face her. In the garden's crystalline light, her bioluminescent channels were beginning to glow again, not with the full brilliance of before, but with the soft, steady light that the physician said might be permanent. A reminder of how close she had come to death. "Among my people," she said carefully, "there is a concept called Velcora. It refers to a bond that transcends social standing. It was traditionally used to describe the connection between warriors who had saved each other in battle, but it has other applications." "Other applications?" "When a royal Kathrani finds someone whose soul resonates with theirs, regardless of birth or status, they may declare Velcora. It is rare. It is permanent, and it supersedes all other political considerations." My heart was beating so hard I was certain she could hear it. "Seraphael, you can't be suggesting." "I'm not suggesting anything." Her voice was formal, but her eyes were anything but. "I am telling you that such a concept exists, and I am asking if you understand what it would mean. It would mean your nobles would revolt. It would mean the alliance talks would collapse. It would mean I would finally have someone who sees me as Seraphael rather than the queen." She stepped closer, close enough that I could see the gold flecks swimming in her purple eyes. "It would mean I would not have to be alone anymore. You have an entire empire. I have an entire empire that wants things from me. You want nothing except my company. Do you know how precious that is?" I reached up, hesitantly, and touched her face. Her skin was cool and smooth, still pale from her illness, but warming under my fingertips. She leaned into the touch, her eyes closing. "I am a human nurse from a backwater colony," I whispered. "I have nothing to offer you. You have already offered me everything." Her hand came up to cover mine. "You offered me truth when others gave me flattery. You offered me your life when others calculated their advantage. You offered me," her voice caught, "you offered me hope when I had accepted death. Seraphael, I do not require an answer now. I do not require an answer ever, if that is your choice. But I needed you to know that the option exists, that if you wanted—" She opened her eyes and I saw vulnerability there that no queen should ever show. "That if you wanted more than careful patience, it would be possible." Before I could respond, a guard appeared at the garden entrance. "Your Luminance, the High Council requests your immediate presence. There has been a development." Seraphael stepped back, and in an instant the vulnerable woman vanished behind the mask of the queen. "What manner of development?" "Council member Talith has called for a vote of no confidence. He claims your judgment has been compromised by—" The guard's eyes flickered to me, "outside influences." The walk to the council chamber felt like a march to battle. Seraphael's hand found mine in the corridor, a brief squeeze of reassurance before we entered the vast hall where her fate would be decided. The council was arrayed in a semicircle of floating platforms, 12 of the most powerful Kathrani in the Empire looking down at their queen with expressions ranging from support to contempt. Council member Talith stood at the center, his silver robes gleaming. "The queen has demonstrated a dangerous attachment to alien influences," he declared, not waiting for formal proceedings. "Her illness clouded her judgment, and a human, a primitive from a species barely capable of basic space travel, has manipulated her emotions during her vulnerability." "I was poisoned by one of my own council members," Seraphael replied, her voice cold and steady. "And that poison was detected by a human nurse when my own physicians failed. Perhaps the dangerous influence here is not the one you suggest." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Talith pressed on. "And yet you keep this human at your side. You walk with him privately. You show him favor that defies all protocol. The Empire whispers that you have become—" "Careful, Talith." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Choose your next words with precision. They whisper that you have become romantically attached to the human, that your judgment regarding the alliance is corrupted by personal feelings." Silence. Every eye in the chamber fixed on Seraphael. She could deny it. She could dismiss me, send me back to the nursing staff, pretend the past weeks had been nothing but professional gratitude. It would save her throne, her alliance, everything she had worked for. Instead, she turned to look at me. And she smiled. "Marcus Webb," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, "I would have you stand beside me." I walked forward on legs that didn't feel entirely attached to my body. The platforms loomed above us, the council members staring down with shock, outrage, and, from a few, something that might have been approval. "Yes," Seraphael said, turning back to face Talith. "I have developed feelings for this human. He saved my life. He saw me as a person when others saw only a crown, and if loving him is a corruption of my judgment, then I accept that corruption gladly. Your Luminance." I am not finished. Her bioluminescent channels blazed brighter than I had ever seen them, the light of royalty reasserting itself. "For 15 years I have served this empire. I have sacrificed personal happiness for political stability. I have made every decision based on what was best for our people, never for myself. And in all that time not one of you, not one of you, not one of you, not one, showed concern for my well-being beyond what it meant for your own advancement." She took my hand, publicly, in front of the entire council. This human did. This primitive from a backwater species. He held my hand while I was dying and asked for nothing in return. He threw himself at an armed assassin to protect me. He argued with me about philosophy at 3 a.m. and challenged my assumptions, and made me laugh when I had forgotten how. Talith's face had gone pale. "The Alliance will proceed, because the Alliance is right, regardless of my personal feelings. And if you believe I cannot separate my heart from my duty, then you have understood nothing about who I am." She turned to address the full council. "I call for a vote, not on my confidence but on Council Member Talith's. He has attempted to use a personal matter to undermine legitimate policy. He has suggested that love is a weakness rather than a strength. and he has insulted both his queen and a man who has done nothing but serve with honor. The vote was not close. 9-3, Teleth was stripped of his position. As the chamber emptied, Seraphael turned to me. Her composure cracked slightly, revealing the fear she had hidden throughout the confrontation. "That was either very brave or very foolish," I said, echoing her words from our first real conversation. "Probably both." She leaned into me just slightly, just enough that I could feel the warmth of her body through her robes. "Are you angry?" "For what?" "For declaring my feelings without asking your permission. For making this political, for—" I kissed her. It was brief and gentle, and probably wildly inappropriate in the council chamber, but her arms came around me, and she kissed me back, and for a moment there was nothing in the universe except the two of us. "Does that answer your question?" I asked when we finally separated. Her smile was like watching stars come out. "It is a start. Conspirators have been exposed. Marcus nearly died protecting the Queen. And now she must make a choice. Send him back to obscurity, or acknowledge what she's known for weeks, that this human has become essential to her heart. The court will never accept it. She doesn't care." The formal declaration of Velcora took place 1 month later, in a ceremony that somehow managed to be both ancient and unprecedented. No Kethrani royal had ever bonded with a non-Kethrani before. Scholars had to invent new protocols. Traditionalists had to swallow their objections. And I had to learn 17 different ceremonial phrases in a language my human vocal cords could barely pronounce. Seraphael coached me for hours every night, patient with my stumbling attempts, laughing at my worst mistakes, but never mocking. "The third syllable requires a harmonic undertone," she explained for the 10th time. "Your species lacks the secondary vocal membrane, so you must compensate with breath control." I am compensating. My breath is very controlled. It's controlling itself right into hyperventilation. She kissed my forehead, a gesture that had become habitual and still made my heart flutter every time. "You are doing beautifully. And even if you mispronounce every word, it will not matter. The Velcora is about intention, not perfection." Easy for you to say. You're not the one facing an audience of thousands who are waiting for the human to embarrass himself. No, I am the one facing an audience of thousands who will judge me for choosing you. Her expression softened. "And I find I do not care. Let them judge. Let them whisper. As long as you stand beside me, nothing else matters." That might be the most romantic thing you've ever said. I am learning. You are a good teacher. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of crystalline light and ancient words, and the weight of Seraphael's hand in mine. I remember the moment when I spoke my vows, imperfectly pronounced but apparently clear enough, and the collective intake of breath from the assembled nobles. I remember the way her bioluminescent channels blazed with joy when I finished, brighter than they had been since before the poisoning. I remember the thunderous silence, and then the applause that started slowly and built into something that shook the chamber. But mostly I remember her eyes. Those impossible, beautiful, galaxy-filled eyes, looking at me as if I had handed her the universe. The reception afterward was a political necessity. Hours of diplomatic conversations and carefully worded congratulations and nobles, who weren't sure whether to treat me as a curiosity or a threat. I smiled and nodded and let Seraphael handle the complex maneuvering while I stood beside her like an anchor, a reminder that she was no longer alone. Late in the evening, we finally escaped to her private chambers. The door closed behind us, and for the first time all day we were simply ourselves. Not queen and consort, not symbols of interspecies cooperation, just Seraphael and Marcus. "We survived," I said, collapsing onto the nearest couch. "I'm calling that a victory." She sat beside me, leaning into my side with a familiarity that still amazed me. "The difficult part is only beginning. The alliance negotiations accelerate tomorrow. Half the Empire still thinks you are a primitive pet I have elevated beyond reason, and we have yet to address the question of succession. You really know how to ruin a romantic moment." "I am simply being realistic. Our path forward will not be easy." "No," I agreed, putting my arm around her shoulders. "But nothing worthwhile ever is." She looked up at me, her expression contemplative. "Do you regret it? Any of it?" "Let me think." I pretended to consider seriously. I went from being an invisible nurse to being the most controversial figure in the Empire. I have nobles glaring at me, politicians calculating how to use me, and an entire species questioning whether I'm worthy of their queen. My life has become exponentially more complicated, dangerous, and exhausting. Marcus. And I get to wake up every morning next to the most remarkable woman in the galaxy, I continued. I get to hold her hand and make her laugh and help her carry burdens that no one should carry alone. I get to love someone who sees me, really sees me, and loves me back. So no, I don't regret a single moment. Her response was not words. It was a kiss that started gentle and deepened into something that promised a future full of similar moments. When we finally separated, she rested her forehead against mine. The alien queen was dying, she murmured. And you were just a human nurse. And yet here we are. Here we are, I agreed. And I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. She smiled, that rare, unguarded smile that no one else ever saw. Nor would I, Marcus Webb, nor would I. Outside the windows, the Kethrani stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the small revolutions happening below. An empire was changing. A precedent was being set. And in a royal chamber, two souls who should never have found each other held on tight and refused to let go. The alliance would proceed. The opposition would continue. The future would bring challenges neither of us could predict. But for now, in this moment, there was only Seraphael's warmth against me, and the certainty that whatever came next, we would face it together. Some stories end with fanfare and triumph, with enemies vanquished and perfect resolutions. This story ends more quietly, with a human who came to the stars looking for purpose, and a queen who had forgotten what it meant to be seen. With two people who chose each other against all odds and reason, and in doing so, changed everything. It ends with love. Imperfect, unexpected, revolutionary love. And really, what better ending could there be? YouTube description, 1,000 characters. For 6 months, Dominion Hunt Commander Vera Kethshan stalked Cole Harrison across 3 continents, every ambush, every near escape part of a trap she never saw coming. Cole was never running. He was guiding her toward a buried truth. The Vexnar swarm is consuming Dominion worlds, and High Command is lying about it. Using human tracking methods no alien sensors can replicate, he leads Vera to a hidden hive ship, and reveals the real weapon is inside him. A bioengineered virus in his bloodstream designed to infect the hive's neural core when it tries to consume him. When the assault turns into a massacre and the swarm adapts, Vera makes the impossible choice. Save the human enemy who just sacrificed himself to stop extinction. The hive ship dies. 3 sectors go silent. And the hunt becomes an alliance. Humanity doesn't ask to be spared. It earns a seat at the table. An HFI sci-fi thriller about strategic sacrifice, earned respect, and what happens when a predator chooses a future over obedience. Keywords. HFI Sci-Fi, Alien Huntress, Human Fugitive, Vera Kethshan, Cole Harrison, Vexnar Swarm, Hive Ship, Biological Virus, Self-Sacrifice, Predator and Prey, Enemies to Allies, Alien Empire, Human Resistance, Extinction Threat, Space Ambush, Tactical Deception, Sci-Fi Thriller, Interspecies Alliance, Humanity Fuck yeah! Hashtags. HFI Siphistory. Alien Huntress. Human Resistance. Enemy. Stolies. Hive Ship. Space Thriller. Humanity Fuck yeah. Alien Empire. Siphiwer. So, the nurse became a prince. The invisible became essential. He saw what others missed because he was looking. Because he cared. And that made all the difference. Some healings aren't about medicine. They're about being seen. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like and subscribe for more HFI content. See you in the next one.